The iron handcuffs closed around Nora Prescott's wrists in the middle of the winter dance, and the fiddle stopped mid-note. Every face in the town hall turned. Sheriff Crowder's grip was firm, his voice loud enough to carry across the shocked silence. "You're under arrest for theft of government property. The warrant came through this morning." Nora's breath caught, her mind racing through impossible connections. She had stolen nothing. She carried mail. She kept records. She lived quietly at the edge of Iron Mesa in a room above the post office. But the cold metal bit into her skin, and the crowd pressed closer, whispers already spreading like brush fire. Hollis Keene had been standing near the back wall, nursing a tin cup of cider and counting the minutes until he could leave without drawing comment. He worked the Bluebird Ranch just outside town, kept his head down, spoke little. But when the cuffs snapped shut on Nora Prescott, something tightened in his chest. He knew her by sight, by the way she rode the mail route every week in all weather, by the quiet competence she carried like armor. He also knew she was innocent, because the papers the warrant described, the stolen land survey documents that had gone missing 3 weeks prior, were hidden in a saddlebag under his bunk at the ranch. He had taken them. Not for greed, not for sale. He had taken them to stop a land swindle that would have cost a dozen small ranchers their homes, including the Bluebird. But no one knew. And now, Nora was paying the price. Sheriff Crowder pulled Nora toward the door. She did not resist, but her voice cut through the murmurs. "I have stolen nothing. Check my records. Check my quarters. You will find nothing. Because there is nothing to find." Hollis set down the cup and moved forward before his mind caught up. He reached the sheriff in 4 strides, his tone calm but edged. "Sheriff, you have the wrong person." Crowder turned, irritation flashing across his weathered face. "Stay out of this, Keene. Unless you have evidence, step back." Hollis met Nora's eyes for the first time. Her gaze was steady, wary, searching his face for intent. He did not know her. She did not know him. But in that moment, he made a choice that would tangle both their lives past any easy unraveling. "I have evidence," Hollis said quietly. "The real thief is still out there. I can help you find him. But you need to let her go." The hall erupted in fresh whispers. Crowder's hand tightened on Nora's arm. "You have evidence? Then produce it now, or get out of my way." Hollis shook his head. "Not here. Not in front of half the town. If you want the fugitive who actually stole those papers, meet me at dawn at the edge of the Bluebird property line. Bring her. We will track him together." Crowder's eyes narrowed, suspicion and calculation warring. Nora stared at Hollis, confusion written plain across her soft features. Why would a ranch hand she barely knew risk himself for her? What game was he playing? The sheriff considered, then nodded curtly. "Fine. Dawn. Bluebird line fence. But if you are lying, Keene, I will put both of you in a cell." He released Nora's arm but did not remove the cuffs. "She stays in custody tonight." Hollis felt the trap close, but kept his face neutral. Understood. Crowder led Nora toward the door. She glanced back once, her gray-green eyes locking onto Hollis with a question she could not voice. He held her gaze just long enough to send a silent promise. Then, she was gone, and the crowd closed around him with a dozen urgent questions he would not answer. Dawn came cold and pale. Hollis stood at the fence line with his horse saddled and a canvas pack strapped behind. Sheriff Crowder arrived with Nora on a borrowed mare, her hands still cuffed. her face drawn from a sleepless night in the Iron Mesa jail. The sheriff reined in and fixed Hollis with a hard stare. "Start talking, Keene. Where is this fugitive?" Hollis stepped closer to Nora's horse, his voice low enough that Crowder had to lean in. "The man you want is riding south toward the old Garver homestead. He is using the land dispute as cover, selling stolen documents to land speculators out of Denver. But he knows someone is onto him. If we ride hard and quiet, we can cut him off before he crosses into territorial land where your jurisdiction ends." Nora's eyes never left Hollis. She had spent the night trying to piece together why a stranger would insert himself into her disaster. Now, hearing him spin a story with such confident detail, suspicion flared. "How do you know all this?" Her voice was hoarse, but steady. Hollis met her gaze without flinching. "I have been watching the situation for weeks. I work cattle, but I also pay attention. When I heard the warrant named you, I knew it was wrong." Nora's jaw tightened. "So you know who the real thief is?" Hollis hesitated just long enough for doubt to creep in. "I know enough to find him. That is all that matters right now." Crowder grunted. "If this is a wild ride to nowhere, both of you will regret it." He unlocked Nora's cuffs, then immediately bound her wrists to the saddle horn with a short length of rope. "She is still in custody. You ride ahead, Keene." "She stays with me. One wrong move and I shoot first." Hollis nodded and swung into his saddle. The three of them turned south, hooves crunching through frost-stiff grass. Nora's mind raced. She was a mail carrier, not a fugitive hunter. Her entire life had been built on routine, on proving herself reliable after years of being dismissed. Her father had called her reckless once, unworthy of the family name, and she had spent a decade earning respect through caution. Now she was bound to a saddle, chasing a phantom thief at the word of a man she did not trust. They rode for 2 hours through cold morning light. The land rolled open and empty, broken only by scrub and the occasional dry creek bed. Hollis set a steady pace, his eyes scanning the horizon. Nora watched him, cataloging details. The way he sat his horse with easy competence, the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he avoided looking back at her too often. He was hiding something. She was certain of it. But what? And why involve himself at all if he was guilty? The Garver homestead appeared as a cluster of sagging buildings against the pale sky. Hollis reined in and dismounted, signaling the others to do the same. Crowder kept his rifle ready, eyes sweeping the empty yard. Hollis moved toward the main house, boots silent on frozen ground. Nora slid from her saddle, wrists still tied, and followed as closely as the rope allowed. Inside the house, dust lay thick on broken furniture. No sign of recent habitation. Crowder turned on Hollis with rising anger. "There is nobody here, Keene. You lied." Hollis shook his head, moving toward a back room. "He was here. Look." Fresh boot prints in the dust, leading to a trapdoor half hidden under a rotted rug. Crowder stepped forward and yanked open the trapdoor. A narrow ladder descended into darkness. Hollis struck a match and peered down. The space below was empty except for a scattering of torn paper and a single leather satchel. Crowder climbed down and retrieved the satchel, then hauled himself back up. Inside were blank land claim forms, a set of forged county seals, and a stack of correspondence between a Denver speculator and someone signed only as R. Crowder's face went still. "This is evidence," but it does not tell me who. Where is the man, Keen? Hollis straightened, his voice tight. He is already gone. He knew someone was close. But this proves Nora Prescott had nothing to do with it. Let her go. Crowder looked from the satchel to Nora, then back to Hollis. You are right. She is clear. He cut the rope binding her wrists. Nora rubbed circulation back into her hands, relief and frustration tangling in her chest. She turned to Hollis. Thank you. But you still have not explained how you knew to look here. Hollis met her eyes, and for a moment she saw something raw flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. I told you. I have been paying attention. Nora did not believe him, but before she could press, Crowder interrupted. We ride back to town. I will send word to the territorial marshal about this. You two are free to go. But I will be watching. They rode back in tense silence. Nora's mind would not settle. Hollis had saved her from a false arrest, but the pieces did not fit. Why would a ranch hand have such detailed knowledge unless he was involved? And if he was involved, why risk exposure to clear her name? When they reached the edge of Iron Mesa, Crowder split off toward the sheriff's office. Nora reined her mare alongside Hollis. We need to talk. Hollis glanced at her, then nodded toward a narrow trail leading away from the main road. Not here. Follow me. They rode a half-mile to a low rise overlooking the valley. The town spread below, smoke rising from chimneys, the distant sound of a blacksmith's hammer ringing. Hollis dismounted and stood at the edge, his back to her. Nora climbed down and crossed her arms against the cold. Start talking. Who are you really? Hollis was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and even. I am nobody, a ranch hand, a man trying to fix a mistake. Nora stepped closer. What mistake? He turned to face her, and she saw the weight he carried, the careful control that kept it from spilling over. I took those papers, not to sell them, to stop a land grab that would have destroyed a dozen families. I was going to return them anonymously once the dispute was settled. But then the warrant came through with your name, and I could not let you pay for what I did. Nora's breath caught. You confess this to me now, after involving me in your chase? Hollis held her gaze. I had no choice. If I had confessed to Crowder, he would have arrested me, and the land grab would have proceeded. Those families would lose everything. I needed time. I needed the real criminals exposed. And I needed you free. Nora felt anger and something else she could not name. You used me. Hollis flinched, but did not look away. Yes, and I am sorry. But I also kept you out of prison. That has to count for something. Nora turned away, her thoughts a storm. She had been raised to follow rules, to earn respect through flawless conduct. Her father had rejected her once for a single moment of recklessness, a choice she had made at 16 that had shamed the family name. She had spent years proving she was different, disciplined, trustworthy. And now this man stood before her, admitting he had stolen, lied, and dragged her into danger, all while claiming noble intent. It was everything she had trained herself to despise. But he had also risked himself to save her. That complicated things. She turned back. What happens now? Hollis exhaled slowly. The documents I took are still hidden. I need to return them in a way that exposes the land speculators without implicating myself. If I can do that, the families are safe and the criminals are caught. But if I fail, I go to prison and the swindle continues. Nora studied him, weighing truth against self-preservation. Why tell me this? Why not just disappear? Hollis's mouth tightened into a grim line. Because you deserve the truth, and because I need help. I cannot do this alone. Nora laughed, a short, bitter sound. You want me to help you cover up a theft? After you got me arrested? Hollis stepped closer, his voice urgent. I want you to help me stop a crime that is bigger than both of us. Those speculators are bribing county officials, forging claims, pushing families off land they have worked for decades. If we do nothing, they win. If we act, we can stop them. But it has to be done carefully, and I need someone I can trust. Nora's eyes narrowed. You do not even know me. Hollis met her gaze, unflinching. I know you ride the mail route in blizzards. I know you keep records that are never questioned. I know you stood in handcuffs in front of the whole town and did not break. That is enough. Nora felt the pull of his words, the dangerous temptation to step outside the lines she had drawn for herself. She thought of her father's voice, cold and final. You are reckless, Nora. You bring shame. She had believed him for so long, but maybe recklessness and courage were closer than she wanted to admit. She took a breath. What exactly do you need me to do? Hollis's expression shifted, hope breaking through the tension. I need you to deliver a package. The stolen documents, along with a letter detailing the swindle, sent anonymously to the territorial judge. You are the mail carrier. No one will question you. Once the judge has the evidence, the law will handle the rest. Nora considered. It was simple, clean, and it would keep Hollis out of prison while still bringing justice. But it also made her complicit. If anyone discovered her role, her reputation would be destroyed. Everything she had rebuilt would collapse. She met Hollis's eyes and saw the same fear reflected back. He was asking her to risk everything on trust, just as he had risked everything to clear her name. The symmetry was not lost on her. Fine, she said quietly. I will do it. But after this, you owe me the whole truth. No more secrets. Hollis nodded. Deal. They rode back to the Bluebird Ranch under a sky turning gray with coming snow. Hollis led her to the bunkhouse, a long, low building smelling of wood smoke and leather. He retrieved a saddlebag from under his bunk and handed it to Nora. Inside were the land survey documents, neatly folded, along with a handwritten letter outlining the entire conspiracy. Nora scanned the letter, her respect for his attention to detail growing despite herself. This is thorough. Hollis shrugged. I have had weeks to prepare. I just needed the right moment and the right person. Nora looked up sharply. Do not flatter me. I am doing this because it is right, not because I trust you. Hollis's mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. Fair enough. Nora tucked the saddlebag under her coat. I will send this tomorrow on the regular mail run. No one will suspect. Hollis nodded, then hesitated. There is one more thing. The speculators have hired men. Enforcers. If they suspect someone is onto them, they will act. You need to be careful. Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. How many men? Hollis's jaw tightened. 3, that I know of. They arrived in town 2 days ago. They have been asking questions, watching the post office. Nora's stomach dropped. They are watching me? Hollis stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. That is why I needed to move fast. If they connect you to the missing documents, you are in danger. Once the package is sent, you need to stay out of sight until the judge acts. Nora's mind raced through logistics. She lived above the post office. She had nowhere else to go. Hollis seemed to read her thoughts. You can stay here. The ranch has an extra room in the main house. The owner, Mrs. Talbot, is discreet. She will not ask questions. Nora bristled. I do not need charity. Hollis met her eyes, his expression serious. It is not charity. It is survival. Please. Nora wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence. But the image of 3 hired enforcers watching her door made the choice for her. She nodded once. Fine. 1 night. Then I send the package and this is over. That night, Nora sat in a small upstairs room at the Bluebird Ranch, staring at the saddlebag on the bed. Mrs. Talbot, a weathered woman with kind eyes and no patience for nonsense, had asked no questions when Hollis brought Nora to the house. She had simply shown Nora to the room, brought her a plate of stew, and wished her a quiet evening. Now, alone, Nora felt the weight of the choice she had made. She was hiding stolen documents. She was lying to the law. She was trusting a man she barely knew. Everything her father had accused her of being, reckless and shameful, seemed to be proving true. But then she thought of the families Hollis had described. The small ranchers and homesteaders who would lose everything if the swindle succeeded. She thought of the justice that would come if the territorial judge received the evidence. She thought of Hollis's face when he had confessed. The guilt and determination tangled together. He had made a wrong choice for the right reasons. Maybe she was doing the same. Maybe that was not recklessness. Maybe it was just the cost of caring. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Hollis standing in the dim hallway, hat in hand. I wanted to make sure you had everything you need. Nora stepped back to let him in. I am fine. Thank you. Hollis glanced at the saddlebag, then back at her. I know this is not what you signed up for. Nora crossed her arms. No, it is not. But I am here now, so tell me the rest. Hollis frowned. The rest of what? Nora fixed him with a steady look. The rest of why you care so much. Most men would let the swindle happen, take their losses and move on. But you risked everything. Why? Hollis was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. My father was a homesteader. He worked a claim in Kansas for 15 years. Then a railroad company decided they wanted the land. They forged documents, bribed a judge, and took everything. My father fought them in court for 2 years, lost every penny. Then he lost his mind. He died believing he had failed us. I was 17. I swore I would never let that happen to someone else if I could stop it. Nora felt her anger soften into something more complicated. So this is about your father. Hollis shook his head. It is about knowing what it costs to lose everything, because someone with money and power decided you do not matter. I cannot bring my father back, but I can stop it from happening here. Nora stepped closer. I am sorry. That is a hard thing to carry. Hollis looked at her, and for the first time, she saw past the careful control to the man underneath. Tired, driven, afraid of failing again. It is easier than the alternative. Nora understood that. She had spent years carrying her own shame, her own need to prove she was more than her father's rejection. "We are both running from something," she said quietly. Hollis met her eyes. "Maybe, but right now we are running towards something too." Nora felt the truth of it settle in her chest. They were strangers forced into an alliance. But somewhere in the last 24 hours, the alliance had started to feel like something more. The next morning, Nora rode into Iron Mesa, with the saddlebag concealed under her coat. The post office was a small building at the edge of the main street, its interior smelling of paper and ink. She slipped inside before dawn, alone, and prepared the package. She addressed it to the territorial judge in careful script, sealed it with wax, and marked it for priority delivery. Then she placed it in the outgoing mail pouch and locked the pouch in the safe. By the time the sun rose, the package was beyond her reach. The deed was done. She returned to the Bluebird Ranch to find Hollis waiting in the yard. "It is sent," she said quietly. He nodded, relief and tension warring on his face. "Then we wait." Nora dismounted and handed her reins to a stable hand. "How long?" Hollis glanced toward town. "The mail coach leaves at noon. It will reach the territorial capital in 3 days. The judge will act within a week. Until then, we stay quiet and hope the enforcers do not figure it out." Nora felt the precariousness of their position. A week was a long time to hide in plain sight. That afternoon, Mrs. Talbot approached Nora with a quiet request. "There is a cattle drive leaving tomorrow. Bluebird stock going to the railhead. Hollis is riding with the crew. It would be safer if you went too. Enforcers will not follow a cattle drive into open country." Nora hesitated. "I am not a drover." Mrs. Talbot smiled. "You are a woman who can ride and shoot. That is enough. Besides, if you stay here alone, you are an easy target. Out there, you have cover." Nora looked toward the window where Hollis was checking saddle rigging. The idea of staying close to him felt both dangerous and necessary. She nodded. "I will go." The cattle drive began at first light. 200 head of Bluebird stock. 4 drovers, Hollis, and Nora. The herd moved slow and steady across winter-hard ground, breath steaming in the cold air. Nora rode flank, keeping strays in line, her body remembering skills she had learned as a girl before her father's rejection had driven her toward safer, more respectable work. Hollis rode point, his attention split between the herd and the horizon. By midday, they had covered 10 miles, the ranch disappearing behind them into empty prairie. That night, they made camp in a shallow draw sheltered from the wind. The drovers built a fire and cooked beans and salt pork. Nora sat close to the flames, exhaustion settling into her bones. Hollis brought her a tin plate and a cup of coffee, then sat beside her. "You did well today." Nora glanced at him. "I grew up on a ranch. Before I became respectable." Hollis raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" Nora stared into the fire. "I made a choice my father did not approve of. He called me reckless. Told me I was a shame to the family. I left and spent 10 years proving him wrong." Hollis was quiet for a moment. "Did you? Prove him wrong?" Nora's throat tightened. "I thought I had. But now I am hiding stolen documents and running from hired guns. Maybe he was right all along. Hollis turned to face her, his voice steady. Or maybe doing the right thing sometimes looks like recklessness to people who are afraid to take risks. Nora met his eyes, surprised by the understanding she found there. You sound like you have thought about this. Hollis's mouth twisted into a faint smile. I spent a lot of years trying to be perfect, trying to make up for what happened to my father. It did not work. Perfection is just another kind of hiding. Nora felt something shift inside her, a small crack in the armor she had built. Maybe you are right. Hollis held her gaze. I know I am. The firelight flickered between them, warm and close. Nora was suddenly aware of how near he was, the line of his shoulder almost touching hers, the quiet intensity in his eyes. She looked away, her pulse unsteady. This is dangerous. Hollis's voice dropped. I know, but I am not sorry. Nora turned back, searching his face for pretense and finding none. What are we doing? Hollis hesitated, then spoke with careful honesty. I do not know, but I know I trust you, and I know that scares me more than the enforcers. Nora felt the same fear, the same fragile hope. Me too. The second day on the trail brought trouble. They were crossing open ground when one of the drovers spotted riders on the horizon. 3 men, moving fast, angling to intercept. Hollis reined in and pulled a spyglass from his saddlebag. His face went tight. It is them. The enforcers. Nora's heart kicked hard. How did they find us? Hollis lowered the glass. They must have been watching the ranch. They know we left together. Nora glanced at the herd, at the 4 drovers who had no idea what they had ridden into. We cannot lead them to these men. Hollis nodded. We split off. Draw them away. If we can lose them in the Badlands to the east, we circle back and rejoin the drive. Nora did not hesitate. Let's go. They broke away from the herd at a gallop, angling toward rough country. The enforcers followed, closing the distance. Hollis led Nora into a maze of gullies and rock formations, the horses scrambling over loose stone. Behind them, hoofbeats echoed, relentless. They rounded a blind corner, and Hollis pulled up sharply. Dead end. A sheer rock face blocked the way forward. Nora's breath came fast. Now what? Hollis scanned the cliffs. There, a narrow trail leading up the side. If we can reach the top, we can lose them. Nora looked at the trail, barely wide enough for a horse, crumbling at the edges. If we fall, we die. Hollis met her eyes. If we stay, we die. Your choice. Nora urged her mare forward. We go up. They climbed single file, horses straining, hooves slipping on loose shale. Below, the enforcers reached the dead end and dismounted, shouting up at them. One raised a rifle. A shot cracked, striking rock inches from Nora's head. She flinched, but kept moving. Hollis was ahead, coaxing his gelding over a narrow ledge. Almost there. Another shot. This one closer. Nora's mare stumbled, panicked. Nora grabbed the saddle horn and held on, murmuring calm words until the mare steadied. Then they were over the top, onto flat ground. Hollis reached back and pulled Nora's mare forward. Ride. They galloped across the mesa, the enforcers' shouts fading behind them. They did not stop until nightfall. By then, they were miles from the Badlands, sheltered in a stand of cottonwoods near a frozen creek. Hollis dismounted and checked his horse for injuries. Nora slid from her saddle, legs shaking, and leaned against a tree. That was too close. Hollis nodded, his face grim. They are not giving up. We need a new plan. Nora's mind raced. We cannot keep running. And we cannot go back to the ranch. Hollis met her eyes. There is one option. We go to Iron Mesa. Confront them directly. Nora stared. That is insane. They will kill us. Hollis shook his head. Not if we do it publicly, in front of witnesses. We accuse them openly. Force the sheriff to act. If Crowder arrests them, we buy time for the judge to receive the evidence and issue warrants. It is risky, but it is the only way to end this. Nora considered. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of choice her father would have condemned. But it was also the only choice that gave them a chance. She straightened. Fine. We go back. But we do it smart. We go to the town square during market day. Maximum witnesses. Hollis's expression shifted to something like admiration. You are braver than you think. Nora met his eyes. Or more foolish. Hollis stepped closer. I do not think so. Nora felt the air between them charge. He was close enough to touch. Close enough that she could see the pulse in his throat, the way his breath misted in the cold. She had spent so long keeping people at a distance, protecting herself from rejection. But standing here, bruised and exhausted and terrified, she did not want distance. She wanted this. Him. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cold against his jaw. Hollis went still, his eyes searching hers. Nora, if we do this, there is no going back. Nora's voice was steady. I know. He kissed her then. Slow and deliberate, his hands coming up to frame her face. Nora leaned into it, into him, letting go of the fear and the shame and the need to be perfect. For the first time in years, she felt reckless. And it felt right. They rode into Iron Mesa 2 days later, market day. The town square was crowded with farmers, ranchers, merchants, and families. Hollis and Nora dismounted at the edge of the square and moved into the crowd. Nora's heart hammered. She spotted the enforcers almost immediately. 3 hard-faced men standing near the livery, watching. Hollis saw them too. He took Nora's hand. Stay close. They walked directly toward the center of the square, where Sheriff Crowder stood talking to a group of ranchers. Hollis raised his voice, loud enough to carry. Sheriff, I need to report a crime. Crowder turned, surprise flickering across his face. Keene, what are you doing here? Hollis kept his voice steady and public. Those 3 men by the livery are hired enforcers working for land speculators out of Denver. They have been threatening citizens, obstructing justice, and attempting to cover up a criminal conspiracy. I have evidence. The crowd went silent. The enforcers stiffened, hands moving toward weapons. Crowder's eyes narrowed. That is a serious accusation. Hollis nodded. I am prepared to testify. And so is Nora Prescott. She sent the stolen land documents to the territorial judge 3 days ago. The judge will issue warrants. But these men are dangerous. You need to arrest them now. The enforcers stepped forward, One of them, a tall man with a scarred face, pointed at Hollis. He is lying. He is the thief. He stole those documents himself. Hollis did not flinch. I took the documents to stop a swindle. You were hired to protect the swindlers. There is a difference. The crowd murmured, tension rising. Crowder raised a hand. Everyone calmed down. Keene, if what you say is true, where is your proof? Hollis pulled a folded paper from his coat. A copy of the letter I sent to the judge. Names, dates, transactions, everything. He handed it to Crowder. The sheriff scanned it, his expression hardening. This implicates county officials. Hollis nodded. That is why they sent enforcers. They knew someone was onto them. The scarred enforcer took another step forward. You are a dead man, Keene. Hollis met his eyes. Not in front of 100 witnesses. Crowder moved between them, hand on his sidearm. Nobody is dying today. He turned to the enforcers. You three, stay where you are. I am taking you in for questioning. The enforcers exchanged glances. For a moment, Nora thought they would draw. Then the scarred man smiled coldly. You are making a mistake, Sheriff. Crowder's voice was ice. The only mistake is yours. Now move. The enforcers were locked in the Iron Mesa jail within the hour. Crowder questioned them separately. And by evening one had broken, confirming the conspiracy and naming names. Nora and Hollis stood outside the sheriff's office as the sun set, exhaustion and relief washing over them in equal measure. Crowder emerged, his face weary. You were right, Keene. The whole thing was rotten. The territorial judge will have warrants by week's end. You and Miss Prescott are clear. Hollis nodded. Thank you, Sheriff. Crowder looked between them. You took a hell of a risk. Both of you. Nora met his eyes. It was worth it. Crowder grunted. Maybe. But next time, come to me first. He turned and went back inside. Nora and Hollis walked slowly through the quiet streets. The danger was over. The conspiracy was exposed. They had won. But now, the question was what came next. They reached the edge of town and stopped. Nora turned to Hollis. What will you do now? Hollis looked toward the horizon. Go back to the Bluebird. Work cattle. Try to rebuild what I almost lost. He paused, then met her eyes. What about you? Nora considered. She could return to the post office, to her quiet, respectable life. But the thought felt hollow. She had spent years hiding from herself, from the fear of being reckless and wrong. But the last week had taught her something. Recklessness was not the same as courage. And sometimes the wrong choice for the right reasons was the only choice worth making. She stepped closer to Hollis. I think I am done hiding. Hollis's eyes searched hers. What does that mean? Nora took a breath. It means I want to stay. At the Bluebird. With you. If you will have me. Hollis's face broke into a slow, genuine smile. Are you sure? It is hard work. Long days. No guarantee of anything. Nora smiled back. I have spent 10 years living a guaranteed life. It was lonely. I would rather take the risk. Hollis reached for her hand. Then stay. We will figure it out together. Nora felt the tightness in her chest finally ease. Together. That sounded right. They returned to the Bluebird Ranch as winter deepened. Nora took a room in the main house and began helping Mrs. Talbot with ranch accounts and correspondence. She still rode the mail route once a week, but now it felt less like penance and more like choice. Hollis worked the cattle and mended fences and slowly began to trust that the danger was truly past. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and talked, learning each other in slow, careful layers. Nora told him about her father, about the shame she had carried, about the girl she had been before fear reshaped her. Hollis told her about his father's death, about the years he had spent trying to atone, about the guilt that still woke him some nights. One evening, a month after the arrest, a letter arrived from the territorial judge. The conspiracy had been fully prosecuted. 3 county officials were in prison. The land speculators had been fined and barred from further business in the territory. The families who had been targeted were safe. Hollis read the letter aloud, his voice rough with emotion. Nora sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You did it. You saved them." Hollis shook his head. "We did it." Nora smiled. "Yes, we did." Spring came slowly to Iron Mesa. The land greened, the cattle fattened, the ranch prospered. Nora and Hollis worked side by side, their partnership settling into something steady and sure. There were hard days. Days when old fears surfaced, when trust felt fragile. But they faced them together, and slowly the fragile thing became strong. One evening in late April, as they rode out to check the herd, Hollis reined in on a rise overlooking the valley. Nora stopped beside him. "What is it?" Hollis turned to her, his expression serious. "I need to ask you something." Nora's heart quickened. "Ask." Hollis dismounted and came to stand beside her horse. "I know we have not been together long. I know we both carry things that are not easy. But I also know I do not want to do this life without you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a simple silver band. "Nora Prescott, will you marry me?" Nora felt tears prick her eyes. She slid from her saddle and took his hands. "Yes." Hollis's smile was brilliant, unguarded, whole. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her. And Nora felt the last of her father's voice fade into silence. She was not reckless. She was not shameful. She was brave. And she was choosing her own path. They were married in June in the Iron Mesa Town Hall, the same hall where Nora had been arrested 6 months before. The symmetry was not lost on anyone. Sheriff Crowder stood witness, along with Mrs. Talbot and a dozen ranchers whose land had been saved. Nora wore a simple cream dress with wildflowers in her hair. Hollis wore his best shirt and a nervous smile. The vows were brief, the kiss long, the celebration loud and joyful. When it was over, they rode back to the Bluebird together. Husband and wife, partners in every sense. That night, lying in their room under the eaves, Nora traced the line of Hollis's jaw in the moonlight. "Do you ever regret it?" Hollis turned to her, puzzled. "Regret what?" Nora hesitated. "Taking those papers. Starting all of this." Hollis considered, then shook his head. "No. It brought me you. That is worth any risk." Nora smiled. "Even arrest and outlaw hunters in a near-death climb?" Hollis laughed. "Even that." Nora kissed him, slow and sweet. "Then I do not regret it either." The years that followed were not easy. The ranch faced droughts and harsh winters, and the constant struggle of frontier life. But Nora and Hollis faced it together. They built a life that was messy and real and theirs. Nora learned to forgive herself for the girl she had been, and Hollis learned to forgive himself for the man he had tried to be. They raised cattle and horses. They welcomed neighbors in need. They became part of the fabric of Iron Mesa. And when people asked how they had met, they smiled and said it was a long story. But the truth was simpler. They had been two people afraid of their own pasts, forced into an alliance by danger and necessity. And somewhere along the way, they had stopped running and started building. Together. Years later, when Nora rode the mail route through Iron Mesa, people still greeted her with respect. But now, it was different. It was not the respect she had earned through perfect caution. It was the respect earned through courage, through standing up when it mattered, through choosing love over fear. She carried letters and packages. She kept records. She served her community. But she also went home every night to a man who knew her, all of her, and loved her anyway. And that made all the difference. One spring morning, as she prepared to ride out, Hollis caught her at the stable. "Be careful out there." Nora smiled and kissed him. Always. But not too careful. Hollis laughed and helped her into the saddle. "That is my girl." Nora rode out into the bright morning, the wind in her hair, the horizon wide and open. She had spent so many years afraid of being reckless. But now, she understood. Recklessness was not the opposite of wisdom. It was the willingness to risk everything for something that mattered. And she had found something that mattered. She had found home. The end.